صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجہ. حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین، حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین، حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین، حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین. دعائی دعائی خدا را دعائی، یہ دشت بلا میں ہے کیسی تباہی، بہایا ہے کس نے یہ خون محمد، قیامت یہ دھائی ہے کس نے لائی، جوانوں بزرگوں کو مارا گیا ہے، شہیدوں میں شامل ہے ننھا سپاہی، حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین، حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین. کیا جشن برپا یوں اہل حواس نے، شہیدوں کی لاشوں پہ ڈنکے بجائے، جلا ڈال آل محمد کے خیمے، سکینہ کے منہ پر تماچے لگائے، جو بیمار تھا اس کا بستر نہ چھوڑا، نبی زادیوں پر بھی در چلائے، حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین، حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین. اٹھی اپنے مرکز سے بنت محمد، سیاہ شب کے چہرہ چھپا کر گئی کربلا میں، تو اس نے یہ دیکھا ہے بوسیدہ کرتے میں ایک لاش بے سر، بدن ساروں تیروں سے چلنے پڑا ہے، لہو میں ہے ڈوبا ہوا سارا پیکر، حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین، حسین شہید الشہید الحسین. ترپی کرے وہ چلائی شبیر بیٹا، لہو نے نہائے ہو سر بھی جدا ہے، تبر کس نے مارا ہے سارا بدن پر، یہ تیروں پہ کس نے جنازہ رکھا ہے، کہاں ہے میرا لال آبا سے بولو، میں پوچھوں گی اس سے یہ کیسے ہوا ہے، حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین، حسین شہید الشہید الحسین. صدا سن کے زہرا کی تھر آئی غازی، جدا تن سے سرتا تو شانے کٹے تھے، غم و یاس و حسرات میں مجروح مستر، کہاں کے دریا کنارے پڑے تھے، سوئے الکناب جو بی بی نے دیکھا، وہافوں کے ساحل پہ جھنڈے پڑے تھے، حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین ادھر درد و غم کی ستاتی تھی زینب جو وحشت کے جنگل میں حیدر بنی تھی کبھی خاک راتی کبھی اشک پیٹی جو کمے کے پیر پہ تنہا کھڑی تھی سکینہ کے ساقہ کو آواز دے کر غمِ شاہدین نے بکا کر رہی تھی حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین کبھی دل میں دیتی وہ ماں کو صدائیں کبھی رو کے کہتی کہ بابا کہاں ہو شہیدوں کا نہات اس سے کی زباں پر آباد کس طرح اس کے غم کا بیان ہو ہمیں بھی شہادت و نصرت کی حاصل خدا را ظہور ایمان زماں ہو حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین حسین الغریب الغریب الحسین حسین الشہید الشہید الحسین صلوات
صلوات نانا تیری زینب لٹ کر آ گئی ہے نانا تیری زینب لٹ کر آ گئی ہے درباروں میں بازاروں میں تیرے دین کی آن بچا گئی ہے نانا تیری زینب لٹ کر آ گئی ہے یہ نیل رسن کے شانوں پر یہ خاک بلا میرے بالوں پر نانا میری ہستی خاک بنا گئی ہے نانا تیری زینب آ گئی ہے نانا تیری زینب لٹ کر آ گئی ہے یہ خون کے چھیٹے چادر پر لپٹی تھی میں لاش اکبر پر یہ خون کے چھیٹے چادر پر لپٹی تھی میں لاش اکبر پر نانا ایک برچھی دل میرا کھا گئی ہے نانا تیری زینب آ گئی ہے نانا تیری زینب لٹ کر آ گئی ہے، یہ نیل رسن کے شانوں پر، یہ خاک بلا میرے بالوں پر، یہ نیل رسن کے شانوں پر، یہ خاک بلا میرے بالوں پر، نانا تیری زینب لٹ کر آ گئی ہے، کانٹوں پہ کبھی انگاروں میں میں چل کے گئی بازاروں میں، کانٹوں پہ کبھی انگاروں میں چل کے گئی بازاروں میں، نانا یوں مجھ پہ ضعیفی چھا گئی ہے، نانا تیری زینب آ گئی ہے، نانا تیری زینب لٹ کر آ گئی ہے، ایک رسی میں 12 تھے گلے، بازو بھی پسے گردن تھے بندھے، ایک رسی میں 12 تھے گلے، بازو بھی پسے گردن تھے بندھے، نانا امت یہ قیامت ڈھا گئی ہے، نانا تیری زینب آ گئی ہے، نانا تیری زینب لٹ کر آ گئی ہے، نیند آتی تھی نا جس بچی کو، کہتی تھی پھوپھی اب گھر کو چلو، نیند آتی تھی نا جس بچی کو، کہتی تھی پھوپھی اب گھر کو چلو، نانا زندہ کی زمین اسے بھا گئی ہے، نانا تیری زینب آ گئی ہے، نانا تیری زینب لٹ کر آ گئی ہے، نانا تیری زینب آ گئی ہے، کانٹوں پہ کبھی انگاروں میں چل کے گئی بازاروں میں، کانٹوں پہ کبھی انگاروں میں چل کے گئی بازاروں میں، نانا یوں مجھ پہ ضعیفی چھا گئی ہے، نانا تیری زینب آ گئی ہے، نانا تیری زینب لٹ کر آ گئی ہے۔
صلوات پر محمد وعلی محمد. مدت مدت کے بعد آئے مدینے میں سوگوار. مدت کے بعد آئے مدینے میں سوگوار. کچھ یاد آ گیا تو ہوئے اور بے قرار. اکبر ہے ساتھ اور عباس نامدار. عابد برے نہ پاہیں تو زینب ہے دل فگار. عابد برے نہ پاہیں تو زینب ہے دل فگار. قبر نبی پہ زینب مستر کے ہیں یہ بین. نانا دہائی ہم سے جدا ہو گئے حسین. مدت کے بعد آئے. اللہم صلی علی محمد. ایک مرتبہ اور صلوات پڑھنے. کیوں لرز اٹھے نہ تربت حضرت شبیر کی. کیوں لرز اٹھے نہ تربت حضرت شبیر کی. درد میں ڈوبی ہوئی ہے داستاں ہمشیر کی. درد میں ڈوبی ہوئی ہے داستاں ہمشیر کی. کیوں لرز اٹھے نہ تربت حضرت شبیر کی. اب نہ قاسم ہے نہ اکبر ہے نہ عباس سیجری. اب نہ قاسم ہے نہ اکبر ہے نہ عباس سیجری. کون تروائے سواری زینب دلگیر کی. کیوں لرز اٹھے نہ تربت حضرت شبیر کی. قید سے چھٹ کر ہوا ہے کربلا میں داخلہ قید سے چھٹ کر ہوا ہے، کربلا میں داخلہ باپ سے عابد کہیں گے داستاں زنجیر کی، باپ سے عابد کہیں گے داستاں زنجیر کی، کیوں لرز اٹھے نہ تربت حضرت شبیر، شور محشر حلقہ اہل حرم میں ہے بپا، شور محشر حلقہ اہل حرم میں ہے بپا، دفن میت ہو رہی ہے حضرت شبیر، دفن میت ہو رہی ہے حضرت شبیر کی، کیوں لرز اٹھے نہ تربت حضرت شبیر، تربت بے شیر پر بانو یہ کرتے ہیں بیان، تربت بے شیر پر بانو یہ کرتے ہیں بیان، اے علی اصغر سناؤ تم کہانی تیر کی، اے علی اصغر سناؤ تم کہانی تیر کی، کیوں لرز اٹھے نہ تربت حضرت شبیر، کس طرح سغرا سنے گی واقعات کربلا، اور کس طرح سغرا سنے گی واقعات کربلا، آمد آمد ہے وطن میں زینب دلگیر کی، آمد آمد ہے وطن میں زینب دلگیر کی، کیوں لرز اٹھے نہ تربت حضرت شبیر، کانپتا ہے عرش اعظم خاک اڑاتے ہیں ملا، اور کانپتا ہے عرش اعظم خاک اڑاتے ہیں ملا، بھائی کو روتی ہے بیٹی شاہ خیبر گیر کی، بھائی کو روتی ہے بیٹی شاہ خیبر گیر کی، کیوں لرز اٹھے نہ تربت حضرت شبیر، کس طرح زینب کرے بھائی مدینے کا سفر، کس طرح زینب کرے بھائی مدینے کا سفر، ہر کلی مرجھا گئی ہے گلشن تقدیر کی، ہر کلی مرجھا گئی ہے گلشن تقدیر کی، لرز اٹھے جرم نے اہل مودت کو سنانے کے لیے، جرم نے اہل مودت کو سنانے کے لیے، کانپتے ہاتھوں سے غم کی داستاں تحریر کی، کانپتے ہاتھوں سے غم کی داستاں تحریر کی، کیوں لرز اٹھے نہ قرب حضرت شبیر، درد میں ڈوبی ہوئے ہے داستاں ہمشیر کی، کیوں لرز اٹھے نہ فاتحہ۔ اللہم صلی یثرب سے کربلا کے مسافر قریب ہیں، یثرب سے کربلا کے مسافر قریب ہیں، لوٹ کر پھرے وطن کو عجب غم نصیب ہے، اس حال سے حبیب خدا کے حبیب بے کس ہے سوگوارے امام غریب، حضرت کے بعد چین کی شکلیں بگڑ گئیں، شہزادیاں غضب کی تباہی میں پڑ گئیں، حضرت کے بعد چین کی شکلیں بگڑ گئیں، شہزادیاں غضب کی تباہی میں پڑ گئی، سب شہر میں عجیب تلاطم ہے جا بجا، صغرا کو فرط غم سے نہیں ہوش دست، لیٹی ہوئی ہے صحن میں منہ پر لیے ردا، سینے میں دل دھڑکنے لگا جب چلی ہوا، کہتی ہے خلق سے اسی حسرت میں جائیں گے، کیوں دل کبھی ہمارے مسافر بھی آئیں گے، اٹھی یہ کہہ کے عاشق سلطان نامدار، لیکن قدم قدم پہ گری وہ نہیں خدا، بے اختیار ہنس کے یہ چلائی ایک بار، لو نانی جان جاتی ہوں تم گھر سے ہوشیار، سچ ہے سفر سے بادشاہ مشق لو تم پہ میں فدا، میرے بابا حسین ماتم کی صف کے پاس جو پہنچی وہ نیک نام رونے لگی پکار کے سیدانیاں تمام کلثوم بڑھ گئی پے تعظیم چلگا اٹھی ایک آہ کھینچ کے زینب پہ سلام اور گرنے لگی تو بازوے فضا پکڑ لیا صغرا کو دیکھتے ہی کلیجا پکڑ اور گرنے لگی تو بازوے فضا پکڑ لیا صغرا کو دیکھتے ہی کلیجا پکڑ لیا صغرا کے منہ کو دیکھ کے روتے تھے سب کے سب بیمار لے کے ناؤ میں پدر پیٹتی تھی جا کہتی تھی مل کے ہاتھ غضب ہو گیا بیٹی بہت اداس ہے بابا بلاؤ اور رکت ہوئی نہ ضبط کنیزوں سے ہٹ گئی صغرا سے اٹھ کے حضرت زینب لے پڑ گئی اور رکت ہوئی نہ ضبط کنیزوں سے ہٹ گئی صغرا سے اٹھ کے حضرت زینب لے پڑ گئی.
Assalamu alaikum. Let's begin with a loud salawat. So tonight will be the last night of the Majalis series of Janab Sayyid Bilal Rizvi. The next two programs will be Wednesday and Thursday. The Majalis will be recited by Maulana Sayyid Zahin Najafi from Najaf, Iraq. Also a couple of other announcements. Tomorrow there will be an Isali Sawab Majalis for Marhum Brother Roshan Ali Mamdani, which will begin with 6 p.m. at the recitation of the Quran, then followed by Namaz al-Maghribain, and then followed by the Majalis. The Majalis will be recited by Maulana S.Mehboob Mehdi al-Najafi. And then also there is another announcement. It is a humble request on behalf of Dr. Sayyid Ali Akbar. Tomorrow at his residence there will be Majalis at 8 p.m. in Oakbrook, and that Majalis will be recited by Maulana Muntazir Mehdi. And brothers and sisters, with this being said, tonight again is the last night of the Majalis of Sayyid Bilal Rizvi. We are really grateful to him on behalf of the IEC management and board and the community. We have gotten tremendous feedback the last few nights. Indeed, a very fruitful topic talking about Ziyarat al-Jami'ah. Inshallah, we all pray that may Allah and the 14 Masumeen give him health and happiness, and inshallah, maybe see him again in the near future in our community, inshallah. And let's begin the Majalis with a loud salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على إمام القبلتين ونبي الحرمين وأفضل الثقلين وجد الحسن والحسين الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين والذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على صاحب الدعوة النبوية والسولة الحيدرية والإسمة الفاطمية والحلم الحسنية والشجاعة الحسينية والعبادة السجادية والمآثر الباقرية والآثار الجعفرية والعلوم الكادمية والحجج الردبية والجود الثقفية والنقابة النقبية والحيبة العسكرية والغيبة الإلهية. اللهم عجل فرجه وساهل مخرجه. أما بعد فقد قال الإمام علي بن محمد الهادي: السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة وموضع الرسالة ومختلف الملائكة ومحبة الوحي ومعدن الرحمة وخزان العلم ومنتهى الهلم وأصول الكرم وأناصر الأبرار وأولياء النعم وناصر الأبرار ودعائم الأخيار وساسة العباد وأركان البلاد وأبواب الإيمان وأمناء الرحمن والسلالة النبيين. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. For the love of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the love of Fatima al-Zahra in particular, a second salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the hastening of the reappearance of the master of our times, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We've entered the final night of our discussions regarding that ziyarah known as Ziyarat al-Jami'ah. As I've mentioned these past two nights, this is that ziyarah which Imam Ali ibn Muhammad al-Hadi gives to his companion by the name of Musa ibn Abdullah al-Nakhai when he says to the Imam, علمني يا ابن رسول الله قولا أقوله بليغا كاملا إذا زرت واحدا منكم. That, O son of Rasulullah, give me something which is baligh and eloquent, something which is kamil and complete, that when I do the ziyarah of any of you, Ali Muhammad, I can recite this ziyarah. You see, the word ziyarah in the Arabic language means qasd. It means intention. Only in Urdu and English we say that I am doing the niyat of ziyarat. I am doing the intention of ziyarat. When you say Ziyaratul Imam al-Husain, you are saying my qasd, my intention is Husain himself. And there is a difference between intending ziyarah and intending the wujud of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Because when you intend Hussein himself, then you are taking from that wujud and muqaddas that has purity within it. And however much capacity you have, you take according to your capacity. Now on this final night, you find on night one, I examined the introductory portions towards Ziyaratul Jami'ah and what those introductory portions they contained. On the second night, yesterday, the entire discussion was about the titles of Ahlul Bayt and this ziyarah found within the Quran. And I discussed the different views about what does the word salam mean when we send it upon Ahlul Bayt. And I mentioned that one opinion is that when we send salam upon Ahlul Bayt, this is not necessarily a dua. It could be a testimony that I am testifying that you are those personalities who are in a state of salam, in a state with no deficiencies, with no impurities. Or at the second level, we pray for their elevation because the levels of salam and peace are infinite, because the dhat of Allah, His very essence, is infinite. And in that manner, Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, their status is continuously increasing. So you find these were the discussions for yesterday. But tonight we enter the final night of these discussions. And when we enter the final night of these discussions, you know, many of you were asking me that in this topic, how did you decide what to recite, what not to recite? Because this is that ziyarah, which is Jamiah. I said I myself don't know. That we prepare, and what we get to, and what we don't get to. But you find this is that ziyarah, that you need to make an effort, all of us, to recite this ziyarah and to recite the translation of this ziyarah to yourself and to your children as well. Because the greatest blessing you can pass on towards these children is the blessing of the wilayah of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. That if they're successful in everything from a worldly aspect, wealth, position, all of that, if one slips in their wilayah, you find that reality won't be fulfilled of that haqq towards Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. And you find this is that ziyarah which shows that reality. Now when you look at the ziyarah, you find that there are a number of lines within Ziyaratul Jamiah which show the impact of the love of Ahlul Bayt within the life of a human being. If anyone ever asked that question, that what benefit does the love of Ahlul Bayt have? Tell them, go and read Ziyaratul Jamiah, and wherever Ziyaratul Jamiah says bimawalatikum, that through your wilayah, through your love, and read all of those lines. For example, in one line, we say within this ziyarah, bimawalatikum allaman Allahu ma'alim dinina, that through your ishq, that through your wilayat, we learn this deen through your wilayat and your ishq, O Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Now in another line, you say wasa'ida man wallakum, that the one who holds on to your wilayah, that person will have no sorrow within him. He'll be in a state of success, in a state of happiness. But over here, I want to focus on this line before I move on towards the next lines. The question is that this line is from the Imam. And when the Imam says it, it is a haqiqat, it is a truth, it's a reality, there's no doubt within it. Then why is it that this line says that the one who is upon your wilayat will always have happiness? But at the same time, within our life, we face difficulties, we face trials, we face anxiety, we face sorrow. That what is that reality? You see, in the realm of wilayah, the person who holds on to their wilayah has a fundamental understanding of hardships and difficulties. You see, you and I, when we face difficulties, those difficulties, they break us. But Ahlul Bayt are those individuals that within their difficulties, they would see that reality of Allah. When they said to Ali ibn Abi Talib, how did you recognize Allah? Amir al-Mu'mineen replied by saying, many times in my life, I intended something. And when I wasn't able to carry out that intention, I saw that there was somebody else who was controlling the affairs. That I found Allah through the breaking of desires. You know what the difference between us and Ahlul Bayt are? You and I, the most we can do is sabr. But this is that household in difficulty, they would do shukr. They would be at the maqam of rida and contentment. You know, if we're successful, we reach the maqam of tawakkul and trusting Allah. When they put Imam Musa al-Kadhim in prison, and Imam al-Kadhim spends 2 decades over that in prison nearly, you find the moment they put Imam al-Kadhim in that prison in Basra, Imam al-Kadhim says, Allahumma inni kuntu as'aluka, that, oh
Allah, that you know, Allahumma innaka ta'lam inni kuntu as'aluka an tufarrigani lil ibadatik. That, oh Allah, you know that I would ask you to give me time to worship you, oh Allah. And oh Allah, you gave me that opportunity, falakal hamd, and to you belongs praise. You see, you and I do sabr. But Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, even in that moment, they did shukr. You know, Sayyida Zainab is that woman that when she sees the body of Sayyid al-Shuhada on the ground, she looks at the body of her brother. She says, Rabbana taqabbal minna hadal qurban. That, oh Allah, accept this sacrifice from us. You know, in the court of Ibn Ziyad, when Ibn Ziyad says to Sayyida Zainab that, how did you find all of this? That your brother is killed, your family members, these difficulties. Sayyida Zainab says, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. That I saw nothing except beauty. You see, this shows that these are those personalities. And Sayyida Zainab is the one who shows the maximum level of wilayah, for she is the daughter of Ali ibn Abi Talib. She goes to show that the one who is upon wilayah carries that world view of Ahlul Bayt within their life. You see, the most fundamental thing in our life that motivates every moment of our life is how do we understand the world? How do we interpret the events of the world? And that is what Ahlul Bayt show us. That the one who understands the events of the world, Sa'ida man wallakum, that he will be happy, the one who holds on to their wilayah. You see, oftentimes when we ask the question that why is there difficulty and trial in our life, many people incorrectly say that it's because of your sins there is trial. Yes, without a doubt, sins bring hardship. When I do something wrong, hardship comes upon me. But that isn't always the case. Because if doing wrong was a condition for hardship, you and I have made mistakes. Ahlul Bayt are ma'soom. Rasulullah says, Ma udiya nabiyun mitla ma uditu. That no prophet was given aziyat and difficulty like I, Rasulullah. That when Rasulullah, he goes to Taif, and he's preaching to the people, they go over there, they begin to throw rocks at Rasulullah. Rasulullah begins to bleed from his head to his feet. But when other Anbiya would go to make a dua, Rasulullah would say that, oh Allah, guide these people, فَإِنَّكُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, for they don't know, oh Allah. So you see, this is that reality. Hardship is not necessarily because of one's own wrongdoing, but the second reality of hardship is that when Allah has created a world of free will, then for the maximum level of goodness to be there, there needs to be hardship as well. That if hardship was not there, we would not see the extent of the fadail of Ahlul Bayt like the way that we do. You know, in Ziyarat al-Jami'ah, we say a line that Kayfa asifu husna tanaik, that, oh Ahlul Bayt, how can I describe the beauty of your praise and your sana? We don't say, how can I describe your fazail? We say, how can I describe the beauty of your zikr and your remembrance? That we don't understand the reality of the dhikr of Ahlul Bayt, we won't understand who they are. You see, that is one level. But after that we say, what jamila balaik, that how can we understand the beauty of your difficulties? You see, what does this line mean? That difficulties aren't something which is beautiful. But in Ziyaratul Jamiah, we are saying Jamila Balaik. The answer lies in the fact, at one level, is that through these difficulties that you faced, Ali Muhammad, people were able to see your maqam and your status. That Imam al-Hussein on the day of Ashura, you find Imam al-Hussein, after picking body after body, he raises his hand in dua and he says, Allahumma anta thiqati fi kulli karbin wa anta raja'i fi kulli shidda. That, oh Allah, in every hardship I rely upon you, and in every difficulty you are my hope. You see, only Sayyid al-Shuhada and the Ma'asumeen can say such a line in such situations. So you find the line says, وَالسَّائِدَ مَنْ وَلَّاكُمْ. Now there's many other lines in Ziyarat al-Jami'ah, but before I come towards some of those lines which I began yesterday, one needs to understand the maqam of this ziyarah. You know, it's stated that in the time of Sheikh Murtada Ansari and Sayyid Tustari, they go towards Karbala. You know who is Sheikh Murtada Ansari? That all of the Maraji and Najaf after him were the students of Murtada Ansari. That Murtada Ansari is that individual that within his dars, there would be an individual who would come and he wouldn't say anything. And Murtada Ansari understood that this person, he's not at that level to sit in my class. One day, that person comes back. That person who didn't understand, who wouldn't say anything, he comes back and he begins to refute Sheikh Murtada Ansari, proving him wrong. Sheikh Ansari says to that man, come towards me. He says to him that I know that you went to the haram of Ali ibn Abi Talib and you asked for Ali to give you ilm. He says to him that the one who whispered Bismillah into your ear read all the way up to Dhaleen within my ear. So this is that individual. But amongst the actions that Murtada Ansari would carry out is that Murtada Ansari says that I went with Sayyid al-Tustari to Karbala. When I went with Sayyid al-Tustari to Karbala, Sayyid al-Tustari narrates that in the middle of the night, Murtada Ansari, he puts on his libas and he goes out from that home we were staying in. And when he leaves that home we were staying in, he stands in front of a house, he recites all of Ziyarat al-Jami'ah, and a voice comes from behind the door that you have not carried out that task which I told you you can't return to Najaf yet. Sayyid Tustari says that I return back to the room so Sheikh Ansari doesn't see me. He says, I go back towards the room. An hour later, before Fajr, Murtada Ansari leaves again. And when he leaves again, I follow him another time. And when I follow him that second time, he stands in front of the door. He recites Ziyarat al-Jami'ah. This time the answer comes, you've carried out that task, you can return to Najaf. Sayyid al-Tustari says that next day, we went for the final ziyarat of Imam Husain's haram, of Aba Fadl Abbas's haram. When we went for that final ziyarah and we were leaving, I said to Sheikh Ansari that what is this? That you went out in the middle of the night and you recited Ziyarat al-Jami'ah. Sheikh Ansari said that our Imam had given me the hukum that whenever you have any problem, go to this house and recite Ziyarat al-Jami'ah. And when you recite it, if the door opens, enter into the room, and if the door doesn't open, walk away from that room. So you see, this is that status of that individual ziyarah that Imam Ali al-Hadi gives us. You know, Sheikh Murtada Ansari as well, you find he reaches that status by lowering his head at the doorstep of Ahlul Bayt. You know, whenever he would go to the Haram in Najaf al-Ashraf, he would kiss the ground. So they said to him that, Sheikh Ansari, you're a scholar. You come in the morning time, give your lesson, kiss the ground, the Zawar don't see you carrying out that action. How nice would it look if a scholar like you carried out the action of kissing the ground of Ali ibn Abi Talib? Sheikh Murtada Ansari says, I wasn't kissing that doorstep of Amir al-Mu'mineen. They say, what do you mean? He says to kiss the doorstep of Ali ibn Abi Talib is the job of Aba Fadl Abbas. That only an individual like that is the servant of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So they say to him, then what were you doing? He says, I was kissing that spot where the feet of the Zawar of Ali ibn Abi Talib would go by. So you find this is that Ahlul Bayt. You know, yesterday we began that discussion about those lines from Ziyarat al-Jami'ah, those first 15 lines before wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and I'll conclude upon this discussion. When we said within those lines, Assalamu alaykum ya Ahl Bayt al-Nabuwa, wa mawdi' al-Risala, wa mukhtalaf al-Malaika, wa mahbit al-Wahi, wa ma'dan al-Rahma, wa khuzan al-Ilm. That, O Ahlul Bayt, you are the storekeepers of knowledge, O Ahlul Bayt. That if there is any ilm and knowledge, it comes from your doorstep. You see, the ilm of Amir al-Mu'mineen, when I gave that ayat yesterday, chapter 13, verse 43, it goes to show that the ilm of Ali ibn Abi Talib itself is a mu'jiza. You know, one day a person comes up to Amir al-Mu'mineen and he says to the Imam that, what will I eat for dinner tonight? You know what he was trying to do? He would ask the Imam, what will I eat for dinner? And he would eat something else to try and prove Amir al-Mu'mineen wrong or to show that his ilm has shortcomings. The Imam says that tonight you'll eat kheer. You'll eat rice and milk. You find that that individual says, simple. All I have to do is not eat rice and milk, and Ali ibn Abi Talib will be proven wrong. So that person, after going from Amir al-Mu'mineen, he returns to his house. He says to his wife that what is for dinner? His wife says that we have kheer, we have rice pudding at the house. That man says, okay, I'll go to another house. He goes, he asks his neighbor. The neighbor says, we have kheer for dinner as well. You find he asks a number of houses. As he's asking those houses, he sees that a caravan is coming from the distance. So he says, okay, if everyone in Kufa is eating this, then I'll go and ask that caravan from out of town. He goes to that caravan. He says, I'm hungry. Do you have anything? They said, yes, we have kheer for you to eat. You see, that man at that moment, he begins to walk away. But that tribe said to him that it is our culture that if you walk away from our dastarkhan, our table, we take you as our enemy. At that moment, they began to strangle that man and they force him to eat that kheer. That person says, whatever Ali ibn Abi Talib says, that reality, it happens. Yani aakhir mein kheer bhi khaye, maar bhi khaye. So you find that is that reality of Amir al-Mu'mineen. No, another incident, you find a person comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen. You see that person, he had 17 camels. He said, oh Ali, I have to give my mirat and my inheritance to my children. And when I give this inheritance, I'm going to give 1/2 to my eldest child, 1/3 to the second one, and 1/9 to the final one. But this number is the number 17. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, it's simple. I'll give you one of my camels. Amir al-Mu'mineen gives that camel. He says, now go and give 1/2, that was 9. Now go and give 1/3, that was 6, totaling 15. Now he says, go and give 1/9, totaling 2, 17 camels. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, then return my camel back towards me. You see, in every area of ilm, khuzanul ilm, you find that the knowledge of Ahlul Bayt manifests. You know, one of the most important areas that's discussed is the area of social governance, that what should be those laws that govern a society, and how does one bring evidence to show that they're truthful or not. You know, in the time period of Ali ibn Abi Talib, there was an individual, there were 2 women who were arguing over a child. One was a male child, one was a female child. You find that that one lady would say, both of them, that the male child belongs to us. That both of them were saying that the male child belongs to us. Amir al-Mu'mineen says that weigh the milk of both of these women. That milk which is heavier, that is the milk of the mother of the male child. You know, even in 2015, you find that there was a US study that showed that that milk you given towards a male child after the birth of a male child, you find that milk is heavier. So you find this is that reality of the ilm of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And this is that ilm which is the Rabbani, that ilm which is given. And that ilm is given to them. Why? As Ziyaratul Jamiah, when it describes Ahlul Bayt, it says, وَالْمُسْتَقِرِّينَ فِي أَمْرِ اللَّهِ. You are those individuals who remain steadfast, who were sabit when it came to the command of Allah. وَالتَّامِينَ فِي مَحَبَّةِ اللَّهِ. And your mahabbat and your love of Allah was complete. وَالْمُخْلِصِينَ فِي تَوْحِيدِ اللَّهِ. And in the tawheed of Allah, there was nothing except sincerity for you, O Ahlul Bayt. وَخُزَّانَ الْإِلْمِ وَمُنْتَهَى الْحِلْمِ وَأُصُولَ الْكَرَمِ. That you know what usul al-karam means? In the Arabic language, an usul, a foundation, is that which you build something on top of. You find the foundation of this building would be called the usul of this building. Within this line, we are saying, O Ahlul Bayt, you are usul al-karam, you are that foundation of generosity. You are that foundation that every other act is built upon. You know, in the time period of Amir al-Mu'mineen, a person comes to the Imam and he says, "O Ali, that can you give me a piece of bread?" Amir al-Mu'mineen, he turns to Qambar and he says, "O Qambar, go and give this man a piece of bread." Qambar says that, "Oh my master, we have a caravan of camels at this moment. I don't know which horse has it. It's upon one of those horses in the caravan." You find that Amir al-Mu'mineen says, "Then give the entire horse." Qambar says, "Oh Ali, I don't know which horse it is." The Imam says, "Oh Qambar, give the entire caravan towards them." At that point, Qambar, he jumps away. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, "Oh Qambar, why did you do this?" Qambar says that, "Oh my master, your generosity was at such a level, I thought that you would even give me away." Amir al-Mu'mineen says, "Oh Qambar, what is the problem if I give you away?" Qambar says that you can find 1,000 ghulam and servants like I, Qambar, but I can't even find one Mawla and master like you, Ali ibn Abi Talib. This is what is meant, that Ahlul Bayt or Usul al-Karam wa Muntah al-Hilm. After that, in a line that you say you are Abwab al-Iman, that you are that doorstep towards Iman. You know, when you recite that Idn Dukhul and you go towards any of the shrines, before entering you ask for permission. And when you ask for permission, you say, "Allahumma bi babika waqaftu," that, "Oh Allah, I stand at your doorstep." I say, "Oh Allah, this is the doorstep of Ali bin Abi Talib. This is the doorstep of Sayyid al-Shuhada, of Imam al-Qadim. Why are we saying that I am standing at your doorstep?" Allah would reply by saying that, "What other path is there to reach me besides these 14 personalities?" You see, this is that reality of Ahlul Bayt, that this Ziyaratul Jamiah is that ziyarah which gathered their fadail. But you know what the hakikat of this ziyarat is? That this ziyarat first and foremost is for Ali bin Abi Talib, then it is for the rest of the Imams. You know, when you go to Najaf, right? On the grave of Amir al-Mu'mineen is a line of poetry written. And that is the poetry of Ibn Abil Hadid al-Mu'tazili. You know what Ibn Abil Hadid writes upon the grave of Amir al-Mu'mineen? He says, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ya barku in ji'ta al-gharib faqul lahu aturaka ta'lam man bi ardika mawda'u. It says that, "O lightning, when you come to the land of Najaf, speak to the land of Najaf and say to it that, do you know who is buried within you?" Then after that, he begins to answer the question. He says, Fika ibnu Imran al-Kalim wa ba'dahu Isa yuqafihi wa Ahmadu yatba'u. He says, within you is Musa, within you is Isa, within you is Rasulullah. I say, oh Ibn Abil Hadid, what do you mean? Musa is not there, Isa is not there, Rasulullah is not there. You find Ibn Abil Hadid, he doesn't answer right away. He says, Bal fika Jibrilun wa Mikalun wa Israfilu wa Mala al-Muqaddas ajmu'u. He says the hakikat of Jibrail is within you. Buried within you is Mikail, Israfil, all of the Malaika are buried within you. Then he says, Bal fika Nurullahi Jalla Jalaluhu. But within you the light of Allah is there. Lidawil basair yashfa'u. Only the one with basirat can see that line in Najaf. And then he answers, what does he mean by all of these lines? He says, Bal fikal imamul murtada wa wasiul mustafa wa batinul anza. That within you is the wasi of Rasulullah, and because the wujud of Ali bin Abi Talib is within you, all of these realities are within you. You know, when you recite the Ziyarat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, you say, Assalamu alayka wa ala daji'ayka Adama wa Nu. That, O Ali, salam be upon you, and salam be upon your neighbors Adam and Nu. You would think that you would send salam upon the Anbiya first, then Ali ibn Abi Talib. But within this ziyarah, you say salam be upon you, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, and your neighbors. In other words, if we send salam upon Adam and Nu within this ziyarah, it is the sadqa and the ata of Ali ibn Abi Talib towards Adam and Nu. In other words, it is not the fazilat of Amir al-Mu'mineen to be buried by Adam and Nu, but rather it is their fazilat to be buried by Ali ibn Abi Talib. You see, that is the status of Amir al-Mu'mineen. You know, one individual, he comes to the Imam and he says to the Imam that, can you tell me where is Jibrail? As Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen is on the mimbar, Amir al-Mu'mineen begins to look to the right. Then he looks to the left. In other words, Amir al-Mu'mineen is looking through the realities of this universe, the oceans, the deserts. After that, he looks to the skies, the heavens, he turns around. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, I looked in all 6 directions. I didn't find Jibrail anywhere. He says, oh man, that leaves only 2 options. Either you are Jibrail or I am Jibrail. He says, because I am Ali bin Abi Talib, then your reality is that you must be Jibrail. So you see, this is that maqam of Ali bin Abi Talib. This is that maqam of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam that manifests within Ziyarat al-Jami'ah. One of the lines that you say after that, you say, wa abwab al-iman, then you say that, oh Ahlul Bayt, you wasasat al-ibad. You are that foundation for any person doing the ibadat of Allah. You know, when we send ziyarah upon Sayyid al-Shuhada, we say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. That, O Hussein, you are the father of the servants of Allah. You know, people ask that question, that why do we have so many ziyarat for Imam al-Hussein? That the day of Ashura a ziyarah, the day of Arba'een a ziyarah, the night of Qadr a ziyarah, the day of Eid a ziyarah, the 15th of Sha'ban a ziyarah, the day of Arafah a ziyarah. Why all of these ziyarat for Sayyid al-Shuhada? You find the falsafa, the answer is found within that line, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. You know, the job of a father is to do tarbiyah. Imam Zainul Abidin in Risalatul Hukuk says that wherever you see any goodness within yourself, your father is the root and you are the branch. that whatever khair there is, it goes back to your father. You see, the reality is Imam al-Hussein is the father of the servants of Allah, that wherever that ibadat it continues, it was the sacrifice of Sayyid al-Shuhada in Karbala that allows one to see that reality. And you find there's many riwayat, there are many traditions, ziyarat, to show the level of that sacrifice of Imam al-Hussein within Karbala. So you see, this was that analysis of Ziyarat al-Jami'ah. As I said, this was a topic that one carries out over 30, 40 nights. But if one can pick up the text of this ziyarah and read through it, you find in this series, I'll consider that a success from this series. You see, when we look through Ziyarat al-Jami'ah, and we acknowledge the different realities of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, one constant theme we see in Ziyarat al-Jami'ah is we acknowledge the sabr of Ahlul Bayt in difficulty after difficulty. For example, one line you say, وَصَبَرْتُمْ عَلَى مَا أَصَابَكُمْ, that, O Ahlul Bayt, salam be upon you, for you were patient in every difficulty that you went through. That what is that difficulty of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad? You know, it's stated there was a poet by the name of As-Sayyid al-Himyari who comes to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. And whenever the poets would come to Imam al-Sadiq would say to them, Zidni bayanan, that recite more, don't stop reciting the Masaib. But Sayyid al-Himyari is that poet that when he recited his poetry in front of Imam al-Sadiq said, Sayyid al-Himyari, stop the Masaib. That I can't handle any more of that. You know what Sayyid al-Himyari he said? He says, Umrur ala jadat al-Hussein faqul li a'dumhi zakiya. That when you go to the grave of Hussein, go and speak to the broken body of Sayyid al-Shuhada and say to that broken body, A'aduman ma, that we, O body, we will not stop watering you with the tears that come from our eyes. Then he says, وَإِذَا أَتَيْتَ بِقَبْرِ الْحُسَيْنِ فَأَطِلْ بِهِ وَقْفَ الْمَنِيَّةِ. That when you go to the grave of Hussein, don't walk away from the grave of Hussein. Cry at the grave of the Hussein. وَابْكِ الْمُطَاهَرْ لِلْمُطَاهَرَةِ النَّقِيَّةِ. Because only the one whose heart is tahir and clean can cry over Hussein. But then after that, Sayyid al-Himyari describes how one should cry for Sayyid al-Shuhada. And when Sayyid al-Himyari says this line, Imam al-Sadiq cries with such severity. He says, Sayyid al-Himyari, stop the Masaib. You know what Sayyid al-Himyari says? He says, Wabki ka buka'i mu'avilatin atat yawman liwahidha al-maniya. He says, when you go to the grave of Hussein, cry like that mother who has one child. And that day where she loses that only child, that's how you should cry at the grave of Hussein. The moment Sayyid al-Himyari said this, Imam al-Sadiq says, Sayyid al-Himyari, stop the Masaib. You see, tonight we remember that Masaib of Ahlul Bayt returning to Medina. You know what the Masaib of Medina is? There were many of those who wanted to be with Ahlul Bayt, but they couldn't go to Karbala. That Ummul Baneen didn't go to Karbala. Salma didn't go towards Karbala. The daughter of Hussein, Fatima al-Sughra, didn't go to Karbala. You know, Ayatollah Ni'matullah al-Jazairi in his book Al-Anwar al-Nu'maniyah, he writes that after the caravan of Ahlul Bayt had left towards Karbala, that every day Fatima Sughra would go to the grave of Rasulullah and she would cry at the grave of Rasulullah. But he says one point it came that she hired a messenger. She sent that letter. You know when that letter it reaches Sayyid al-Shuhada? It was the day of Ashura. Hussein is standing over the body of Ali Akbar. That letter carrier, he comes. He says, Anta al-Hussein, that are you Hussein? Imam al-Hussein says, Man anta, that who are you? He says, Ana baridu sughra, I am the messenger of Fatima Sughra. The man, he says, but there is one question. The description your daughter gave, it didn't describe you. The Imam says, how did my daughter describe me? She said that when you see my father, on one side my brother Ali Akbar would be there, on the other side my uncle Abbas would be there, but you are stand. You find Imam al-Hussein, he takes the letter. It's not written what was written in the letter, but what Sayyid al-Shuhada does, he places that letter on the chest of Ali Akbar. He says to that messenger that this blood will be the reply towards Sughra. Now that time has come. Ahlul Bayt have returned to Medina. If you want to understand the Masaib of Medina, Kulthum would write in a line of Marthia, Ya Medina ta jaddina la takbalina, that oh Medina, my grandfather, don't accept us, because when we left with us was Hussein, when we left with us was Abbas. Now when we've returned, neither Hussein is with us, neither Abbas is with us. You know, when Ahlul Bayt returned to Medina, they didn't enter immediately. They stood on the outskirts of Medina. The Imam says to Bashir, oh Bashir, go and tell the people of Medina. The moment Bashir he goes, he says, Ala ya ahla yatrib, la muqama lakum biha faqatil al-Husayn fa'admu imidraru. You know what Bashir does? He doesn't call it Medina, he calls it Yathrib. Because this is that city, it was called Medina after Rasulullah. Before Rasulullah, it was called Yathrib. Now after Hussein, don't call it Medina anymore. Call this place Yathrib. The moment Bashir, he says this, Fatima Sughra, she comes to the caravan. She comes to Sayyidah Zainab. She says that, where is my father? Sayyidah Zainab says, Sughra qad qutila, he's been killed. She says, Aina akhi Aliyun al-Akbar, where is my brother? Sayyidah Zainab says, qad qutila. She tells Sughra the musiba. You know, after Sayyidah Zainab, she tells Sughra the masayib. Sughra begins to go from lady to lady. She goes to Kulthum, she goes to Zainab, she goes to Rabab, she goes to Layla. Zainab says, oh Sughra, what are you looking for? Sughra says, I know that my father has been killed, but ya ammati, that oh my aunt, where is my brother Ali Asghar? Sayyidah Zainab says, Sughra, a time had come, your father was asking for water instead of water, and arrow went to Asghar, min al-uduni ila al-udun, 1 year Ali Asghar. Then that point it comes where Sayyidah Zainab goes to the grave of Rasulullah. When Sayyidah Zainab goes to the grave of Rasulullah, she says, Ya Jadda, that if there weren't non-madam over here, I would show you those marks that when they would tie my arms from Kufa to Sham. Then after that, she goes to the grave of her mother Fatima Zahra. Zahra. When Sayyidah Zainab goes to the grave of Zahra, she says, oh mother, whenever we go on a journey, we bring something back. Oh my mother, I brought the shirt of Hussein. She places the shirt of Sayyid al-Shuhada on the grave of Zahra. Sheikh Abbas Qummi writes, at that moment the grave of Zahra begins to shake. The moment the grave of Zahra begins to shake, Zainab says, oh mother, you only have the shirt of Hussein. Oh mother, I would watch Hussein on the plains of Karbala. After that, Sayyidah Zainab, she returns to her home. When she returns to her home, Abdullah says, oh woman, Zainab isn't here. Sayyidah Zainab says, oh Abdullah, do you not recognize Zainab anymore? Now that point it comes. Zainab returns to the room of On and Muhammad. You know, in Karbala, Zainab didn't cry for On and Muhammad. In Kufa, she didn't cry. You know, in Sham, each of the women would take the heads of their children. Zainab only took the head of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Zainab didn't take the heads of On and Muhammad. But at that moment, Sayyidah Zainab begins to cry. She says, oh On, oh Muhammad, I promised my mother Fatima that if I cry, it would be for Hussein. One more line of Masahib. You know, the mother of Abbas hasn't met Sayyidah Zainab. When al-Baneen comes to Sayyidah Zainab, al-Baneen looks at Zainab. She says, Ya Zainab, wa Husaina. The moment al-Baneen says, wa Husaina, Sayyidah Zainab says, oh al-Baneen, wa Abbasa ya al-Baneen. Oh al-Baneen, your Abbas gave everything. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Ya Allah, we ask through the rights of the Madlumiyah of Ahlul Bayt that wherever the followers of Ahlul Bayt are in difficulty, help them. Wherever they're sick and ailing, cure them. Ya Allah, give us the tawfiq to benefit from the teachings of Ahlul Bayt found within Ziyarat al-Jami'ah. Ya Allah, allow us to understand the status of Ahlul Bayt according to our capacities. Ya Allah, grant us the ziyarah of Ahlul Bayt. Matam Hussain.
Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain. खबरे ज़हरा पाए ज़ैनब का था नौहा अम्मा लुट गई कर बो बला में तेरी दुनिया अम्मा लुट गई बो बला में तेरी दुनिया लुट गई कर बो बला में तेरी दुनिया अम्मा लुट गई कर बो बला में तेरी दुनिया अम्मा। शिम्र ने सिबते पैगंबर का गला काटा है कुंद खंजर से बरादर का गला काटा है कितनी बेरहमी से सरवर का गला काटा है गर्म रेती पा तड़पता रहा भैया अम्मा लुट गई कर تیری دنیا ماں لٹ گئی کرب و بلا میں تیری دنیا کل تلک اون محمد تھے علی اصغر تھا پاس قاسم تھا سکینہ تھی علی اکبر تھا جن چراغوں کے ہی دم سے تیرا روشن گھر تھا آج انہیں کھا گیا مقتل کا اندھیرا ماں لٹ گئی کرب و بلا میں تیری دنیا لٹ گئی کرب و بلا میں تیری دنیا میری چادر کا محافظ میرا صدر نہ رہا میری ڈھارس نہ رہی سانی حیدر نہ رہا میرا بھائی میرا ابا سے دلاور نہ رہا کھو گیا زینب مزتر کا سہارا ماں لٹ گئی کرب و بلا میں تیری دنیا لٹ گئی کرب و بلا گودیاں لٹتی ہوئی جلتے ہوئے گھر دیکھے اور نیزوں پا شہیدوں کے کٹے سر دیکھے تیری بیٹی نے کئی حشر کے منظر دیکھے یاد آتی ہے تو جلتا ہے کلیجہ ماں لٹ گئی کرب و بلا میں تیری دنیا لٹ گئی کرب و بلا میں تیری دنیا داغ جو دل نے اٹھائے ہے بتائیں کس کو نیل بازو پا جو آئیں ہے دکھائیں کس کو اپنی بربادی کی روداد سنائے کس کو آج دنیا میں نہیں کوئی ہمارا ماں لٹ گئی کرب و بلا میں تیری دنیا ماں لٹ گئی کرب و بلا میں تیری دنیا ماں
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. جب ہو کے رہا قید سے گھر جائے گی زینب جب ہو کے رہا قید سے گھر جائے گی زینب جب ہو کے رہا قید سے گھر جائے گی زینب جب ہو کے رہا قید سے گھر جائے گی زینب گر تم نہ ہوئے ساتھ تو گر تم نہ ہوئے ساتھ تو مر جائے گی زینب جب ہو کے رہا قید سے گھر جائے گی زینب جب ہو کے سے گھر جائے گی زینب اچھا میں چلی جانب زندہ میرے بھیا کرتی ہوئی ماتم تیرا پڑتی ہوئی نوحہ سینے پہ لیے زخم جگر جائے گی زینب جب ہو کے رہا قید سے گھر جائے گی زینب جب ہو کے رہا قید سے گھر جائے گی زینب تم قتل ہوئے اور اجل مجھ کو نہ آئی کس طرح میں زندہ ہوں نہ پوچھو میرے بھائی ڈھونڈے گی تمہیں اب تو جدھر جائے گی زینب جب ہو کے رہا قید سے گھر جائے گی زینب جب ہو کے رہا قید سے گھر جائے گی زینب بھائی تیرے مظلومی کی کھاتی ہوں قسم میں باغ در زندہ سے نہ رکھوں گی قدم میں جب تک نہ فنا ظلم کو کر جائے گی زینب جب ہو کے رہا قید سے گھر جائے گی زینب جب ہو کے رہا قید سے گھر جائے گی زینب پیغام زمانے میں تیرا عام کروں گی بھائی تیرے قاتل کا وہ انجام کروں گی سر تن سے جدا شمر کا کر جائے گی زینب جب ہو کے رہا قید سے گھر جائے گی زینب جب ہو کے رہا قید سے گھر جائے گی زینب گر تم نہ ہوئے ساتھ تو گر تم نہ ہوئے ساتھ تو مر جائے گی زینب جب ہو کے رہا قید سے گھر جائے گی زینب یا حسین یا حسین
السلام علیکم یا عبداللہ السلام علیکم یا ابن رسول اللہ السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ السلام علیکم یا غریب الغرباء السلام علیکم یا معین الضعفاء والفقراء السلام علیکم یا شمس الشموس السلام علیکم یا انیس النفوس علیک تحیۃ والثناء ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ السلام علیکم یا صاحب العصر والزمان الامان 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 السلام علیکم یا شریک القرآن السلام علیکم یا مظہر الایمان السلام علیکم امام زماننا ھذا عجل اللہ تعالی فرجک وسہل اللہ تعالی مخرجک وظہورک جعلنا من انصارک و اعوانک السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ